Hi everybody, my name is Ollie. I'm a doctor living and working in the UK NHS, and I haven't got into training this year. So in the last video I put up on the channel, I think I talked about the interview process a little bit and how getting into specialty training and a residency training, as you might call it in the UK, actually works. And for me, in this cycle, I applied for two training programs, two residency programs, radiology and neurosurgery. Radiology, I did not make the minimum entry exam cutoff to reach the interview process, so I got rejected early on. And then for neurosurgery, I ranked highly enough to get an interview, but have not received an offer in the first round as I'm recording this video. So what they say is, and I'll go into this more in a minute, you are deemed appointable, but you have not matched into training this year. And I'm going to break this video down into a few parts. Hopefully it's no more than 15 minutes or so, but each part is important. So the first part is what's actually happened. I said I was appointable but have somehow not got a job. What does that mean? The thing to understand about specialty training is that recruitment is national. So imagine, and this is the case, that there are say 15 jobs for neurosurgery spread out all across the UK, from Northern Ireland, Scotland, all the way down to the bottom of England, so London and the southwest, and you rank all of them after your interview from top to bottom. So you might say, my top job would be in London and I would least like to work in Liverpool or somewhere else. You rank all of the available jobs in order. This is called your preferencing. Then ultimately after your interview you get given a score, and that score is used to determine A, whether you are appointable or not, and B, your relative rank. So the purpose at a broad scale of the interview is to work out, is this candidate good enough to get a neurosurgery job, to become a trainee, a resident, or are they not at this time? So you can imagine that you'll be sorted into two groups, appointable or not appointable, and then of the appointable group, you are then ranked in order from 1 to say maybe 45. To give an example, about 60 people are interviewed. Let's say that by that point 45 of them are deemed appointable. What then happens is there are 15 jobs available. The first 15 people, the top scoring person will receive their top choice of jobs, so they might put London, Queen Square, like my centre, first, and then they get offered that job. And then the second ranking person will get their top ranked job that isn't the one that's already been taken, and so on for the third person and the fourth person, until all jobs have been offered to people in the list. So if there are 15 jobs in the first round, all of them will get offered to the top 15 scoring people. And if you are below that top 15 people, so your rank will be something lower than that, you will not have matched in the first round. And this is the situation where I'm in at the moment, where I was deemed appointable, or in theory good enough to get a job, but not ranking high enough to be in that first round of offers. I don't know exactly at the moment what the main culprit for that is. My entrance exam score was not super high. It was good enough, but certainly not as good as some of the people I was competing against. My portfolio was pretty strong, but then my interview performance I haven't had the feedback on yet, so I suspect that my interview is probably the main culprit, given that that's what the ultimate score is weighted towards. But I also don't know my rank yet, and that's why I wanted to make this video now, so it's timely and describes my thoughts at this time, because as far as I know, I could be anywhere from say rank 16, the next one on the list that might get a job, or I could be the very bottom rank and so will not likely get a job. I don't know. So that's where we are now. What happens next is something called cascades. Now, I've already explained how the jobs get offered to the first people on the list, but for various reasons, it's very possible that not everyone will be able to take up a job that they've been offered. So the top few people will be very happy, I'm sure, because they'll have got jobs that they wanted, but the people towards the bottom of that list may be offered jobs that either don't work so well for them or they can't geographically take up. So someone who is based in London, for example, might have ranked number 15 or the bottom of the list that have been offered jobs, and they may get offered a job very far away in Scotland or Northern Ireland or somewhere else that they just can't geographically do. They can't uproot their lives to go and take up that training post, so they would reject it. And what basically happens is every 48 hours, so we're actually expecting the first of the cascades tomorrow as I record this video, any untaken jobs, so jobs that have been rejected or jobs that come from academic clinical fellow posts not being taken up, will drop down into this recycling process. It's a bit like being on a waiting list, and so the people on the top of the waiting list will get offered any untaken jobs in the next cascade, and then this goes on and on through several cascades every 48 hours until all jobs are taken. So as of right now, as of making this video, I don't know where I am on the ranking list. I could be next on the list, I could be bottom of the list, I could be somewhere in the middle. And what that means therefore is that I could be offered a job in the coming days. So I've not been successful in the first round and I could be offered a job. Statistically, it's unlikely, but there is a chance, and it does happen. I don't know how well I've performed yet. And it's only once we get to the end of that cascade process that I will truly have an answer. How far the jobs drop down the rankings is highly variable, so it can be as low as say 18 or 19. Those rankings will get offered jobs and then the process stops. There was a year recently where it went to rank 31, so more than half of the people-ish that had been interviewed. And again, there's no way of knowing that until all of these processes finish. So that's the first two parts done. That's where we are, and that's how the processes work. The third then question is what comes next, and I alluded to this in the last video. If I want to keep applying for neurosurgery, what can I do, or what will I do? The short answer is that from August of 2024, so this year, I can't do any more neurosurgery. There is a 12-month postgraduate limit, as I said in the last video. You go a day over that and you are not eligible for ST1 training anymore. You would have to either pick something else or go via a slightly alternate route that I've spoken about before that is less stable at the moment. For me, that would mean that if I wanted to work clinically, I would have to do something that's not neurosurgery, not neurology, and not neurocritical care. So I could do 6 months of something core surgical, so I could do like orthopedics or pediatric surgery or cardiothoracics or something else, or I could do something like acute medicine or general critical care or anything else that's not neurosurgical, neurology, neuro-ITU, and I can do that for as long as I want without going over that 12-month cap. However, the priority for me this coming year, what would be my FY4, if you like, is I want to work less than I have this year. I've been working in a busy neurosurgical centre and I just want to be able to take a bit more time for myself and to work on other things. And so that means that the jobs that I've been applying for and what I would want to take up are mostly non-clinical, so they're either teaching or research or kind of leadership, governance-y type roles. And I've actually been successful for a teaching job recently, which I've then had to give up because of the time that's been taken to go through this cascading process. So I interviewed in a very competitive teaching job, did very well, got the job, I got my first choice of posts within that, and then had to give it up the next day because it was not going to work out with the timelines of national selection recruitment. But the bottom line is I'm still very much wanting to pursue neurosurgery, and I will give it 2 more goes. That's the plan at the moment. I always said I would give it 3 goes. This year has been go number 1, and statistically, when you ask people, it seems to take most people, I think the average I've come across is 2 tries. I don't know what the actual number is, but it's very common, very, very acceptable for it to take 2 goes. And that applying once and being appointable and then not quite getting there and then applying again the next cycle is the most common trajectory that you hear of. And that then brings me on to the next major thing that I want to talk about, which is kind of relationships with the other people that I work with and senior support, because obviously when you're working in a centre, like I work at Queen Square, right, which did really, really well this year. It had 6 SHOs into national selection. So 6 out of 15 jobs went to SHOs from where I work. And that is an amazing achievement. That's staggeringly good. And it should speak for how good the centre is. Obviously, I think the seniors, the registrars and the consultants that I work with were gutted for me, as much as I'm gutted for myself. They, I think, wanted me to succeed. The speed at which everyone reached out when they realised I hadn't gotten a job, from kind of even teams that I don't work that closely within saying, you know, I hope you're doing okay. When the dust settles, let's catch up, have a coffee and work out how we're going to progress you for next time. Everyone's super positive, very supportive, take it on the chin and move on. And that's a really great thing. I think it speaks for how good the people that work at this centre are, not just as surgeons, because obviously they're exceptional, but just as people. I'm very, very lucky to work with such an excellent and caring team of people. I know neurosurgeons don't have a reputation for being kind and caring and approachable, but they are. And I think they know the pain of this process well. On a personal level, something I was a little bit worried about was this particular eventuality where, because I was uncertain about how the interview had gone, I knew that there was this possibility, statistical likelihood in fact, that I wouldn't get a job but would be surrounded by people who did get jobs and would be very successful, and that might not be the most obviously pleasant experience where you've sort of failed in the thing that you were trying to do, but everyone around you has succeeded. Obviously in those circumstances it would be really difficult not to be jealous and not to be disappointed, but genuinely I'm quite relieved in a sense that I was sat next to one of my colleagues as they got their offer. Like, I watched it come through on their screen and they looked at it. Genuinely, I am absolutely over the moon for my colleagues that got in, because it's such a stressful process. We were all in this process together, trying to overcome this very difficult hurdle. And the only reasonable kind of outlook that I think we can have, we have to celebrate the successes of those people that get through, because it's an enormous achievement, really, really enormous. And we just have to be happy for our colleagues. And I genuinely, like, from the bottom of my heart, I'm over the moon for these guys. They've all worked so hard, deserve the success that they've had, and they're all going to be fantastic surgeons. I can't speak for the people at the other units, but I assume they're going to be fantastic surgeons as well. And I've put something up on social media about this where I think there's a certain degree of tentativeness perhaps in the UK, or this idea that we shouldn't shout about our achievements and we shouldn't be really proud, and worried that we might upset the people who didn't get numbers. But I just don't think that's a healthy approach, because if we take that approach, where are we? Like, we can't be happy for our colleagues. Where does that leave us? You know, that's a really bad place to be. We should celebrate the successes of people that get them, and then for people like me who don't make it through, the question is, what can we learn from this experience and what can we do better next time? The worst thing to do, I think, would be to stick your head in the sand and ignore it. It's, how can I use this experience, even though it's not worked out the way that I would want, to do better next time? And that's something that I most definitely will be doing. But the very last thing that I want to talk about in this video is the worrying state of the job market. And this isn't the best place to perhaps discuss this, but it's the pressing reality. And historically, if you didn't get a really competitive job, not just for neurosurgery, but dermatology or cardiology or whatever you want to do, you could basically repeat and repeat and repeat and keep reapplying until you eventually got in. That's definitely true of neurosurgery. I know of people that it took 3 or 4 tries to get in, and that's fine. But because you can only apply once a year, you need something to tide you through until the next year, especially with that 12-month limit on neurosurgery that I've already talked about. So you need another job, you need a plan B. And the functional problem that I think will get worse is that those plan B jobs are now also becoming very, very competitive. So the teaching job that I told you that I applied for and I got, there were more than 250 applicants for 4 posts, which is a crazy competition ratio. I'm obviously very pleased I got through. What that means is that because these FY3, these junior clinical fellow, trust grade SHO, clinical teaching fellow, all of these kind of backup jobs that people do when they don't get into training to tide themselves through, improve their portfolio and apply again next time, because it's getting so competitive to get into training and it's becoming more and more competitive for each specialty, that back pressure is then filling back into these non-training FY3 trust grade SHO posts, and so they are becoming competitive. Like, numerically they're becoming more competitive than getting a training number. just much less difficult to get one because you don't have to go through the exams and the portfolio and all of that. It's more just really about an interview. And the locum market is also basically dead because the point of all of these trust grade SHO posts, as well as the rise of groups like ACPs, physician associates, all of these groups that to some degree are intended to reduce locum spend, which is a completely understandable thing for the NHS to want to do. You don't want to be hemorrhaging money on locums, so that's why these other things roll out. Basically, the job market is becoming slowly worse. What I don't know is what will happen when all of these problems get bad enough that you won't be able to reapply and reapply and reapply for the specialty you want because you won't have the security in being able to get a plan B job. So you'll either have to live off savings until you can keep going, or you'll have to accept a training number in something you don't want to do in order simply to stay afloat because you won't have a choice, or leave medicine temporarily or permanently. And I don't know what we're gonna do as a profession when we reach that super saturation point, but we could get there fairly soon, within the next few years, because things are getting exponentially worse at the moment unless training numbers are opened up, which no government seems to have a particular interest in doing, because the whole point is that centrally the government seems to want less reliance on consultants because they're expensive. What it's in the interests of the government and kind of the NHS central bureaucracy more generally is you want an army of SHOs and mid-level providers, so sort of advanced nurse practitioners, PAs, ACPs, etc., and a very small number of training registrars that will feed a very small number of supervising consultants. That seems to be the direction of travel. And what you'll get are permanent SHOs, basically, people that can't progress past there. That's what we're heading for. So I don't know what's going to happen, particularly for people in my situation that want to do something very particular. And I've said before, I would very genuinely sooner leave medicine than commit to a training program that I'm not interested in. It's just not worth it to me for my own kind of academic integrity and quality of life. I am willing to keep bashing my head against the wall, and if I can't train in something that I want to train in, then I will leave. I have options in other places, and that's unfortunately what will become the direction of travel for a lot of people. But that's it. That's a bit of a miserable existential place with which to leave the video, and I might pitch something to the BMJ or something about that. But unless things change direction, that is generally where I think we're going. So we'll see what happens. That's where I'm at right now. I really hope I can get this edited before the cascades start, because then I'll know my ranking and I'll know where I am. I may even, with a sliver of luck, get offered a job, but I don't know. And if I do, it will be in somewhere that I maybe can't go, which would be the bad place to be in. But anyway, that's where we are for now. Take care, and I will keep you updated. Bye-bye.